everybody. Welcome to Badge Banter, where we feature some amazing stories from some of our best partners about the importance of the ID badge as a foundation of an organization's overall security efforts. I'm Lindsay Martinez from Badge Pass, and I'm really excited to introduce you to today's guest, Tyler Webb from Allegion. Thanks so much for being here, Tyler.
Thanks for having me, Lindsay. Excited to be here.
Well, good. Tyler, you had a very interesting start to the security industry as you did not start your career here. You originally worked in the card office at University of Oklahoma prior to moving into the manufacturer side of security. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience and how that led you to what you're doing now with Allegion?
Yeah. To your point, started at the University of Oklahoma, not the traditional path to where I am today. But really was a customer of the card office first, and so worked with their team to sort of make some processes more efficient, take out some human error. Then had the opportunity of joining the card office when they were rebranding and launching an NFC credential. And that ultimately paved the way to being one of the first three schools to launch the student ID in Apple Wallet and then Google Wallet eventually. So that kind of got me into the industry, and then spent the past almost 5 years on the manufacturing side, helping universities launch mobile credentials, a lot of it by way of lifting their hardware that was maybe mag only or maybe nothing at all. And so I've really seen the mobile credential grow quickly in the higher ed space.
Absolutely. Well, I'm super excited to have you on, Tyler, not just because you're fun, but also because I think your experience as an end user, as well as a rep on the manufacturer side, kind of gives you a unique perspective on both the importance of mobile credentials, but also the physical badging side, because let's face it, you have a lot of experience there too before in your prior life you transitioned to mobile credentials. So we'll start a little bit today with your thoughts on the university market, and then we'll transition into other types of verticals. But the mobile credential specifically has had a much faster adoption in colleges and universities than it has outside of that space. So why do you think that it's been so much more successful there? And how do you see mobile credential rollout continuing in colleges and universities over the next 5 or so years?
I think first, if you take a macro view, it's kind of crazy that it's grown so fast in higher ed because of the use cases of 100% wherever the card could be used. There's so many different systems on a university campus. So when you look at it that way, you're like, holy hell, how did that happen? But I think it's because of sort of the generational change. I think Apple's done that really well with, introduction of the very unique colored computers, and then the iPod, and then the iPhone. And I think that it was a smart target to kind of grow this outside of as they age out and move to different areas. But that being said, I think that a lot of students have demanded it. I think that there's a subtlety when you're going on a campus tour and you see the person giving the tour who's a student and they're using their phone or their watch to open up spaces. I think it's just like a nice subtle thing in the back of your mind, like this is a technologically forward institution. I think that has something to do with it, but I think that really it's been because that's where it started. It was a logical place, and there have been some great companies out there, some great partners of ours that have really been driving the demand at the end user level at the universities, paving out roadmaps. And so it just kind of makes sense when you look at it from that perspective. But yeah, we're certainly in the part where this mobile thing is starting to grow outside of higher education. I think that's an exciting time.
Absolutely. So you're not wrong. I mean, when I think about mobile, I think about the cool factor all the time. And I mean, Apple did also give it to colleges and universities first. So I guess that could also have something to do with adoption happening there first. But outside of the cool factor, there's certainly things that make it difficult, especially in places with, smaller budgets than a larger university, to accomplish 100% adoption, to your point. And so some of that could be, in my opinion, what's limiting the growth outside of that space. So outside of colleges, I think we would probably both agree, you can tell me if you disagree, that mobile credentials are certainly moving into that arena, or at least we're having conversations about it. But most of those conversations are about mobile credentials and physical credentials coexisting together, kind of acting as supplements to one another. So in your opinion, how do you think mobile credentials and physical badges work best together? And are there certain verticals that you see them being more complementary to one another?
Yeah, so to start, I think I'll be very I won't be combative at all. I think that there's always a place for physical credentials. I think just back to the feeling of getting your first driver's license or getting your first student ID and that warm, like it just came off like the printer and it's exciting. Like there is a tangible feeling to physical credentials that doesn't exist within the mobile realm. There's certainly use cases, right, where you need to constantly show that you belong in that area. I think of K through 12, where you're wearing your ID and it says this is not a stranger. This person does belong here. So, but that being said, I think that when mobile works best, it's when there's true parity to the card. I think if the mobile credential is more cumbersome or clunky than the physical credential, whether that be a card or a fob or something like that, then it's going to slow adoption of mobile credentials. So I think that outside of higher education, I do see a lot of still interest in the Bluetooth solutions, which may require pulling up an application, authenticating, that kind of thing. But when you think about the student in higher education, like they are using their credential, they live on campus, they eat on campus, they print on campus, they go to the gym on campus, they go to a sports game, like they do all of these things. And so if you're having to pull up an app, authenticate, do something like that, it's clunky and you're just going to use a card. Whereas, if you're looking at maybe like an apartment or your office where you're coming and going like once or twice a day, not that bad to pull up an application and authenticate. Can it be clunky? Yes. Potentially still more convenient because your phone's going to always be on you. But on the other side of that, I think that because there aren't so many touch points, that it's a little bit easier to go contactless only and be able to launch a wallet-based credential.
Sure.
Because you're pretty much talking about access control indoors at that point. There's not a ton of printing and vending and meal plans. Maybe you have like a time clock system in the employee badge arena. But I think the lift is a lot lighter than it is in higher education, but we're still seeing slow adoption.
I think you're not wrong. So I talk about this a lot. Most access control implementations in the corporate space, outside of huge, Fortune 500 companies or big organizations with tons of offices, you're talking about like 8-10 doors. And there's tons of places with smaller implementations than that. So if you've got readers that aren't compatible, this isn't like a college where I have 4,000 wireless locks and then tons of hardwired doors throughout my campus that need to be compatible, plus all my point of sale terminals, plus tracking, whatever other types of applications you're using. That seems more overwhelming than it does in the smaller scale. I think the biggest limitation in the smaller environment is just price point at this point. And I know you and I have talked about this before. I'm pretty vocal about it. But to your point, sometimes I think that that's why technologies like Bluetooth or even physical badges win out there, because even if it's annoying, let's say, it's not as cool of an experience if it's just innately in my wallet and I can just use my phone. I still have to pull up an app. That may be from an employer perspective. If I've got 200 employees and I'm footing the bill for 200 mobile credentials, I may say, well, it may be worth it for me to choose, a more cost-effective technology. And whereas in the college space, a $20-$50 card gets lost in an exponential amount of fees that students and everybody's incurring already. And it's just a different type of budget, I think, that people are operating with. So I'm excited to see the industry kind of make moves to help make that better in those spaces. In your opinion, like as you're working with customers and coming up with a transition plan, what do you usually recommend people do? So if I'm a company with 200 employees and I think, hey, mobile's pretty cool, I might want to do that as a supplement to my physical badge. Like, how do you work with companies to kind of help them with that transition to that?
Part of it is as they start to make sort of adjustments to their physical access security, like, buying solutions that are sort of future proofed. That's always a smart thing. You don't want to buy something that's been in the market for 20 years and is at risk of becoming, obsolete or end of life, end of support. So I think buying the right technology that allows you to use a physical credential today, maybe use a Bluetooth credential tomorrow, maybe use a wallet-based credential in 2 years, whatever the case may be. Just making smart hardware decisions, I think, is always good. The other thing is, I think as consumers, right, it's behooves us to meet with several different places, right? You're not just buying the very first car you see on the lot, right? You're probably doing some market research. You're going to multiple dealerships. You're looking at Blue Book value, that kind of stuff. So I think it's really important to take that same approach. Meet with, allow your partners that you trust, whether that's your integrator or even your hardware manufacturer, or even your credential manufacturer. Meet with them and kind of talk through like, hey, who are some of the players out there that I should be looking at, and can you help me get a meeting with them to kind of look with this, kind of figure out what this is going to look like. What's my 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plan. So I think making smart decisions like that is just always good for us. But the other thing I think is to consider is, what are my needs, right? So if you're burning through fobs left and right, and you're spending a fortune because you've got, let's say you've got 200 tenants, and they can't seem to hold on to that, but they hold on to their phone, or at least they mark it as lost if they do. I think looking at it from that perspective, like, what is the annual cost of this going to look like, and what am I spending right now on other technology? And if you kind of come to a point where you say in like a couple of years, we're going to be more profitable if we get rid of this physical thing, absolutely. But to my point earlier, I think there's always going to be a need, whether that's ADA reasons, whether that's just someone doesn't trust the fact that their phone's being used, are they tracking me or something like that? I think there's so many use cases for having a smart physical credential as well. But maybe we're getting to a point where not every physical credential is a smart credential. Maybe some of them are just dumb, cheap pieces of plastic that have my name on it. You'd say this is where I belong. I
Sure.
think that really kind of comes down to each company, each residential space to kind of make those decisions based off of the data that they have.
I think that's good advice. I was liking when you were talking about, bringing in multiple perspectives and talking about what a transition looks like and how you incorporate multiple technologies. It reminds me a lot. I mean, it's not that different than years we've spent working with customers on a migration from, a Prox card to a smart card and a more secure technology there. Surely you don't just snap your fingers all the time overnight and replace all of your existing infrastructure, but you can certainly look at a path and make smart decisions as you add devices or implement new softwares, to make sure that they accommodate the technologies that you want to. And in my opinion, mobile would just be another future technology that you may want to consider. So I think that's great advice. Well, this was fun. I love having conversations like these. I love talking about not just specific verticals, but also like the future of the industry and what we feel like the transition to mobile, and how it will work with physical looks like. So I appreciate your insight on it, Tyler.
Thanks so much. I always appreciate talking to you, and this is just like every other conversation I think we've had since we've met. And I think we kind of always go back to this debate, so this is great. So
I
thank
do.
you.
I do always bring people back to talking about the badge, so I have it in me. But it was fun. Thank you, Tyler. I enjoyed it, and we hope that you will join us next time as we take you beyond the badge.